Bombs fall over Beirut even as diplomacy enters the room. Benjamin Netanyahu says Israel is ready for direct peace talks with Lebanon, but only after disarming Hezbollah. Beirut demands a ceasefire first. Is this the first real opening for peace or diplomacy unfolding under fire? Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says Israel is prepared to begin direct peace talks with Lebanon, signaling a potential diplomatic opening even as Israeli strikes across Beirut, the Bekaa Valley, and southern Lebanon reportedly killed more than 200 people in one of the war's deadliest escalations in months. Netanyahu said he had instructed his cabinet to move toward direct negotiations with Beirut, citing what he described as repeated Lebanese requests for talks.
In light of Lebanon's repeated requests to open direct negotiations with Israel, I instructed the cabinet yesterday to start direct negotiations with Lebanon as soon as possible. We would focus on disarming Hezbollah and establishing peaceful relations between Israel and Lebanon.
If realized, direct negotiations would mark a major shift between Israel and Lebanon, two states that remain technically at war and have never established formal peace relations. But Lebanese President Joseph Aoun said any diplomacy must begin with an immediate halt to hostilities.
The only solution to the situation in Lebanon is to achieve a ceasefire between Israel and Lebanon, followed by direct negotiations between them. The efforts were underway on a diplomatic track. The proposal had begun to receive a positive response from international stakeholders.
The diplomatic overture comes amid intensified fighting after Israel renewed major operations against Hezbollah, following rocket fire from the Iran-backed group on March 2nd. According to Lebanese authorities, Israeli strikes have killed around 1,700 people and displaced more than 1 million. Local media say at least 400 Hezbollah fighters have also been killed during the fighting. Pakistan has meanwhile emerged as an active diplomatic intermediary. Islamabad said Lebanese Prime Minister Nawaf Salam contacted Pakistani Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif, seeking support to halt Israeli attacks.
Pakistan was engaged in sincere efforts for regional peace, and it was in this spirit that the peace talks between Iran and the US were being convened.
Pakistan has framed current diplomacy as part of a broader regional de-escalation effort, though Israel has rejected suggestions that the Iran ceasefire extends to the Lebanese front. Meanwhile, Iran condemned the Israeli strikes, warning they undermine any diplomatic path forward. President Masoud Pezeshkian said that Israeli strikes on Lebanon violate the ceasefire agreement and would render negotiations meaningless.
Israeli strikes on Lebanon violate the ceasefire agreement and would render negotiations meaningless. Tehran would not abandon the Lebanese people.
With Israel floating peace talks while simultaneously intensifying strikes, Lebanon insisting on a ceasefire first, and regional powers jockeying to shape the process, any diplomatic breakthrough remains uncertain, while the battlefield continues to dictate the pace of negotiations. A senior advisor to Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf has issued a stark warning, suggesting the current ceasefire framework could collapse within hours if Israeli operations in Lebanon continue. Mahdi Mohammadi, a strategic advisor to Ghalibaf, wrote on X that time is rapidly running out for the truce to hold.
Only a limited number of hours remain. Without the complete restraint of America's dogs in Lebanon, there will be no ceasefire or negotiations, and the missiles are ready to fly. The equation of shared destiny among the components of the resistance axis, as part of the new regional order following Iran's victory, must be solidified, if possible with kind words, otherwise with war.
The warning comes as Israeli strikes on Lebanon continue, despite a broader ceasefire arrangement linked to Iran, raising fresh questions about whether the agreement applies to the Lebanese front. In another X post, Ghalibaf argued that diplomacy cannot proceed under what Tehran views as ongoing military and political pressure.
A ceasefire and negotiations after the aggression against Lebanon The denial of the right to enrichment and the violation of Iran's airspace have no meaning.
Meanwhile, Iran's Deputy Foreign Minister, Saeed Khatibzadeh, told ITV that Iran's delegation will only attend peace talks in Islamabad if Israel stops attacking Lebanon.
Any peace in the region had to include Lebanon, and the coming hours will be critical. Iran was on the verge of retaliation last night, but held back to allow for diplomacy, including calls from the Americans to the Israelis urging them to stop hitting Lebanon.
The statement reflects a growing position within Iranian circles that conflicts across Gaza, Lebanon, and beyond are no longer separate fronts, but part of a single, interconnected theatre. Israel has maintained that its operations in Lebanon fall outside the scope of the ceasefire, while Iran and allied groups argue the opposite. With strikes continuing and warnings escalating, the gap between those interpretations appears to be widening. And if that gap turns into action, this ceasefire may not just collapse, it may trigger the very escalation it was meant to prevent. A fragile ceasefire in the Middle East is already showing signs of strain as fresh threats, missile alerts, and continued military operations raise doubts over whether the agreement can hold. Tehran has warned it will withdraw from its ceasefire arrangement with the United States if Israel continues its military campaign in Lebanon. According to reports by Tasnim news agency, halting hostilities across all fronts, including Lebanon, was a central condition of the two-week truce. An unnamed source indicated that any continuation of Israeli strikes would be treated as a violation of the agreement. The warning comes amid renewed Israeli attacks targeting positions linked to Hezbollah in southern Lebanon, which has resulted in the killing of hundreds of civilians. Iranian state television, citing another source, reported that Tehran is preparing retaliatory options, with its armed forces already identifying potential targets. Israel, however, has rejected the claim that its operations in Lebanon fall under the ceasefire. Officials maintain that the agreement applies only to direct hostilities involving Iran, not to its long-standing conflict with Hezbollah. This disagreement has exposed a widening divide over how the truce is being interpreted, with Iran and Pakistan both insisting that it must extend across all theatres involving Iranian-backed forces. The strain on the ceasefire is not limited to Lebanon. Iran has reportedly closed the Strait of Hormuz once again, blocking oil tankers from passing through the vital waterway. According to shipping sources, vessels attempting to transit the strait received warnings from the Iranian Navy.
Any vessel trying to travel into the sea will be targeted and destroyed.
At the same time, missile activity has continued across the region. Iran launched missiles towards Israel early on April 8th and signaled that further strikes on Israeli military positions in Lebanon and the West Bank were under consideration. Air raid alerts remained active in Israel even after the ceasefire was announced, casting immediate doubt over its effectiveness. Elsewhere in the Gulf, Bahrain activated air raid sirens following what it later confirmed was an Iranian missile strike. The attack caused a fire, but no injuries were reported. Additional reports pointed to Iranian strikes on Saudi Arabia's Jubail petrochemical area and missile alerts in the United Arab Emirates, highlighting the regional scope of the tensions. The ceasefire itself had been presented as a last-minute diplomatic effort to halt weeks of escalating conflict involving US and Israeli strikes on Iranian targets, alongside repeated Iranian missile attacks. It was also tied to conditions including Iran halting attacks and allowing the safe passage of shipping through the Strait of Hormuz. Talks were expected to begin in Islamabad under Pakistani mediation. With missile alerts ongoing critical shipping routes under threat, and disagreements over the scope of the ceasefire intensifying. The situation remains highly volatile.